All right, can you hear me? We're good. So they gave me a laser pointer, which is pretty cool. So I feel pretty good about that. But yeah, so let's get right into it. Basically, what I want to talk about today, and I'll give a little intro to myself after this, is just kind of how to do better attribution and marketing automation with Telium, and kind of how Tripping has done that. So just a little bit of background about myself. Run product analytics at tripping.com. Previously was at ancestry.com, where we were one of very early people that worked with Telium, and I basically managed rolling that out across the site. I don't know if Jared Tippett is in here, but he's still with Ancestry and still carrying the torch on for us. But before that, kind of always been in product and marketing, startups, and really my career began working in analytics at the Federal Reserve. So that's kind of my background. I'm sure you're all wondering what's tripping.com. Hopefully you didn't read that up there, but basically we have nothing to do with drugs or selling drugs online, but although that could be a good business pivot for us if things don't work out. But no, tripping.com is the world's largest search engine for vacation rentals. Really what we do, much like Kayak does with flights, is we aggregate vacation rental sites. You think HomeAway, VRBO, TripAdvisor, Flipkey, all these sites you've probably never heard of in Europe as well. But what we do is we sit above all of them, aggregate them, and kind of find you the best prices and give you one-stop shopping for vacation rentals. Whether you're going to go skiing with your family, you're going to Europe, you want to stay in an apartment by the Eiffel Tower in Paris, we kind of do it all. And just to give you a sense of kind of the market that we play in, it's about a $100 billion market currently and growing rapidly. Airbnb has really helped to kind of grow that market and make it more acceptable for people to go stay in vacation rentals. And really just lately with HomeAway getting bought by Expedia for almost $4 billion, it just really opened that market and kind of making it grow. And so we're kind of sitting in an interesting place right at the top, kind of close to Google, kind of sitting above all of it and watching as all of that inventory comes in. So as I have here, we have about 8 million properties right now on our site. And when I joined 2.5 years ago, we had about 1.5 million. And so I don't know if how familiar people are with two-sided marketplaces, but really building supply side of a business is super important to kind of get demand to actually come in and use your site. If you don't have comprehensiveness, like why would people come to your site? And so that's really been the focus for us, and we've been able to really kind of jump those numbers up. To give kind of some perspective, HomeAway and VRBO, which HomeAway owns VRBO. They have about 1.1 million properties, and Airbnb has a little like 1.5 to 2, and somewhere in there. So as you can tell, we have about 6 million more than they do. So pretty cool. But from a product side, really kind of what we want to do as a business to kind of change the industry is focus on making vacation rentals as easy to book as a hotel. And that's kind of what we want to focus on going forward. We have the comprehensiveness, we have price comparison, we give you the best deal. But really what we care about is kind of make the booking experience super easy. And to boot, we're pretty much everywhere in the world, so I guarantee you can go to any major city and you'll find a rental from us. So let's just jump into kind of how the site works, because this will be, I also wanted to share a quote. We just got some press from Condé Nast, and I think this kind of sums up a lot of what we do at Tripping. So let's just talk a little bit about our site, because it's going to kind of inform kind of some of the use cases I go into later. Basically, like Google, we are a search engine, right? And we want to drive results to the top that people are going to click on. And that's kind of what we have here. You can kind of see, we have price comparison across different sites. We give you all these different things. But really kind of for our business, when we think about what is a customer, we have different models across all these different companies. This one might be a CPC model. This one might be an inquiry model. One might be a booking model. So we actually get paid on much different things across all the different sites, which actually makes our conversion events very different and actually somewhat difficult to kind of manage because the barriers to conversion are much different across all those different companies. So what we try to do is we actually normalize our conversion to kind of the lowest common denominator. And really that's what we call an outbound click. Someone clicks here, 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 basically anywhere on this card, and they go to a partner site, and we call that an outbound click. But that makes our kind of barrier to conversion very easy, right? And so we have very high conversion rates. But it also means that people can convert many times on your site. So it introduces a lot of interesting challenges with kind of tag technology that kind of really comes from a world of someone getting to a checkout page and that pixel loading. We don't have that in our world, and so a lot of what we'll talk about today is kind of how we kind of shape that and kind of make tag technology work for us. All right. And then lastly, on the on-site booking stuff, we got some more press. Fritz Demopoulos is the founder of Chunar, which is like the largest meta search site in China for travel. And kind of really just talking about what we're trying to do as an industry is move towards this booking model and really get away from having to deal with this click-out problem, have our own checkout page where we can just have easy technology on there. So, and this is just a little sneak peek of kind of what it looks like. We're definitely a very data-driven company, and we want people to kind of have price comparison, price trends, and all these things to make booking just easier. All right, so let's jump into Telium and tripping, because I think that's why everyone's here, and kind of the novel use cases. So I kind of think about the two stages of our business before and after Telium, the BT era and the AT era. Before Telium, I remember lots of, we were about 5 or 6 people in the office, a lot of sleepless nights, trying to grow as quickly as possible. We were launching as many marketing programs as we possibly could, and our tags were just going out of control. Our developers were spending way too much time working on that and not really focusing on basically building our business, the core product features that were going to push us forward. And we basically had this gap. We were spending just too much time. And at some point, we had probably about 80 plus tags with custom logic in the code base, just ugly. It's hard to QA. No one really quite knew what was going on. And it was kind of got to a tipping point where we were like, this is just taking too long to launch anything, and marketing can't get what they need to grow the business as fast as they want. So at that point, it was just kind of like, we needed to get a new tool. Fortunately for tripping, I had worked at Ancestry and had used Telium before, done all the research on all the different tag management tools out there, and it was just a no-brainer. So actually, I probably called up our rep and said, hey, let's do this. So I think it was a pretty easy sales cycle for us. But the last 2 points, I think are more of what I'm going to talk about today. These things are obvious. These are just the great value adds of Telium. But really kind of the novel things you can kind of do with it later on is kind of solve some of this problem down here. So now just kind of the stats, we rarely need developers to do anything, which is great. I mean, I love our developers, but at the end of the day, it's much faster for our product team, which is fairly technical, just go on and do everything we want to do on Telium and get it done like that. That's the key. And that's kind of reaching velocity and what we care about. But we're launching tags within an hour now, and previously it was taking us 3 days or more, but we kind of on average see about 24 times faster time to market for a tag. And our marketing team is they're going like crazy. We don't have a ton of people on our team, but they can launch tons of networks, test them out, iterate, and move on, just because it's so easy to put them up. But the 2 things I wanted to talk about are kind of unifying business attribution logic and then easily kind of passing complex data structures to all our marketing automation tools. And really in this context, I'm going to talk about our ESP. We currently use SendGrid in a migration to ExactTarget, but long story short, that's who we use for this. So let's go into kind of the business attribution logic side of it. As I kind of talked about, we have a site that has many different kind of conversion levels, and we kind of try to normalize it down to a very easy kind of thing to measure for us, clicking out. And so again, here's the site. The main problem being there's different business models with every click. The second being is that for each of these kind of different partners, for marketing partners that we bring in, we've had to kind of do custom logic by each of them. So as people are aware, some pixels, depending on the company, load on page load only. They don't work with JavaScript events. And that's kind of one of the things that we struggle with, is that we get these bad partner technologies that just don't work in our context. Like the Bing, for example, their pixel does not fire on JavaScript events. You have to get a custom extension to work with them. So things like that were actually kind of a big detriment to our business. If Bing, being a big search engine, you're trying to do a lot of SEM traffic, and you can't even track your conversion, that's a pretty big problem. So we wanted to avoid that and get the marketing team off our back. So kind of our solution to this, and I think it's fairly novel. I think our reps at Telium were trying to help us out on this a lot, and they did a lot of great things to kind of get us in the right direction, and I think it was a learning experience for all of us. So highly recommend contacting your rep if you ever have complex problems, because they will help you on it. But really what we did was said, okay, we have this tag, and when someone comes in and they can do multiple conversions on our site where they can click out 5, 6 times, we don't want to fire a conversion pixel every time for that. We just want to fire it once, and we'll only pay for them once. So you think about CPA networks, you think about affiliate models, think about retargeting, any of these things where it's on an acquisition basis. You don't want to overpay. You want to get all attributed to the one time the user did it and not split up your ROI across 10 different things. So what we did is we said, okay, let's take this affiliate tag. When someone does an outbound click on our site, we fire a JavaScript event in Telium saying someone did a conversion. Then when we get to the load rule, it says, okay, that event occurred. It's this marketing channel, so we can load that affiliate tag. Then once that tag fires, we actually have another extension that says this tag actually fired right into the Telium cookie that tag fired. Now, as long as that cookie persists, that tag will never fire again. And so a user can basically never get counted again for that channel as being a converter. And the reason that's important for us is that, again, people can click out like 10 different times, and we don't want to pay on that every time. So this really helped us basically to make much better affiliate marketing programs, CPA programs, anything that basically had a CPA target. And the effect for us was basically, this is early days, those numbers are even bigger now, but we were saved about 100K annually just doing this. So I think that was pretty big for us. And really, for me, the takeaway is that kind of better attribution from this perspective just saves you money and increases ROI. At the end of the day, if you don't count your users more than once as a customer, you're better off. And really for us, being able to kind of do that was big for our business. And now we actually kind of have it normalized in the Telium cookie where for every channel, we're counting how many conversions they do and just making sure that they never fire again. If you have more of a business where, like when I worked at Ancestry, we have a subscription business, you can only buy it once, so it wasn't really a problem. But as you kind of get out into these more marketplace businesses where it is people can purchase many different things, and not necessarily have a basket on it, it just becomes much more of a problem and something to solve. And at the end, we'll go into Q&A if people have more questions about like the actual nitty-gritty details of this. It was just kind of a flyby. So let's move on. This one, I think, is kind of the really interesting thing and some of the novel things I think we've done with Telium. And really, it's about taking kind of complex data that you have on your site and based on user actions and passing that data into Telium and kind of making a good unified central spot for that so that you can use it other places. So the problem for us, again, we have a user, they come in, let's say they click on this house. We're like, great, we know they clicked on that house, but we want to like retarget them or remarket to them later. And one of the things you can do is we can say, well, we kind of have a lookalike model. We say, oh, well, let's say this property, this property, this property are all similar, kind of based on their search. So what we do into the UDO, or well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Sorry, so the problem is that kind of logic is kind of hard to do to kind of pass to an ESP in a standardized way. Kind of, the number one problem, just getting that in real time to USP, this means that you have to like, come up with custom integration, things like that. And then the second problem is that it's hard to then trigger that to go out. So we'll continue on there. So our solution for this was, well, a user clicks on that property. We kind of know the other things they care about. Why don't we just write that to the UDO? Universal data object, for those that don't work in that, is kind of Telium standard data kind of structure. And so we basically write to that. We say, hey, OK, this is the array of data for the user that clicked on this property. We write in the property titles, the photos, the pricing, the like rooms, bathrooms, everything you could think of for that property, write it in. And we actually then use the Telium JS extension to turn that into JSON and then pass that to our ESP. So that means our ESP is getting like real-time data from the user, like exactly tailored for them. It's like personal just for them. And we actually then trigger that email right away. But the great part is we don't just want to trigger it once. We want to give a whole life cycle. We don't want them to say, OK, hey, you're searching right now. We know that people search in a 2-week period. We'll send you emails in that 2-week period. We want to set you up for like a 6-month kind of cycle. And so what we can actually do is we actually pass more properties than we need for that first email. And that's all kind of set up and queued over time. So it's just it's a win-win situation for us. And really for our business, this has been a game changer. Oh, sorry, this is what our email looks like. Nothing pretty, but just it's very personalized. People highly engaged on it. We get a ton of people responding to this saying, oh, I like this one, but not this one. Can you like tailor it to give me a better one for this? So people very much like it. But for us, this is big for our business. Like at the end of the day, it's easy to be an acquisition model and bring people in the door, but bringing them back is really the harder thing, and doing it in a really clever way that kind of creates longevity is the harder bit. And for us, that was about a 25% increase in LTV. And that's just with like better automation of our marketing. And in hindsight, it was kind of like, why haven't we been doing this all along? This is super simple and very easy to do with Telium. So one of the other added benefits of passing that data into Telium to the UDO is you think, okay, well, hey, if I can send them an email about them liking this photo or this property, and here's like 4 other properties, 5 other properties, we actually then can pass that to your retargeting tools like Criteo, anything like that, where you actually don't have to rely on them to kind of do their engine to figure out what people might like or show you something they looked at but didn't want to book. We can actually send them the data we want them to and kind of use our own algorithms to kind of improve that. So it makes it very easy to do any kind of turnkey integration for anything that requires kind of user-generated kind of action data. We'll keep going, but at the end of the day, easy data sharing is key to every business. The faster you can share that data across all your different platforms, the better off you're going to be. The faster you're going to move as a business. All right, so one more kind of problem that we kind of had is that, is that we had this great email program now. We're like sending all these emails. We're seeing tons of people come back. This is wonderful. Now, we kind of have this quandary, though, is people come on their desktop, click on a property, and then we send them an email, and they come back on their mobile phone, and they go on and make a booking. Great, we made more money as a business, but at the same time, we just split that user into 2, and we're not actually giving kind of the credit back to the first attribution channel for that conversion. And so what you end up seeing is like a weird kind of ROI thing where email is somehow generating new users, when in reality, if you're not buying any lists, but just generating it from your current list of users, you should never get a new user from email, right? And so we were kind of like, well, this is kind of a big problem for our business because we're relying on that so heavily. So there was I didn't come up with it, but there's some clever minds in our business that said, well, we already have the visitor ID. Why don't we actually just use the same thing we're doing for passing all of our property data in? Why don't we pass the visitor ID in and also pass it into our email templates? And so what we actually started doing is, right here is actually passing into all our email links a visitor ID. So what happens is someone clicks through an email, comes to our site, the visitor ID gets read by our client side and actually overwrites the visitor cookie that got set and stitches the person back together right there. Not in a database, just right at the cookie level. So that anything they do subsequently is already attributed back to the visitor ID. This solves a whole host of problems because I think we've all experienced things where you have like kind of more offline data that you have to bring in and kind of get this all set up. And this is actually a great novel solution that we couldn't have done without Telium. Maybe we could, but there's a much easier to do it. And this was kind of a fix that took us less than a day to do. And for us, for me, as someone managing a team and wanting to get the most out of them, that's just huge. Like that turnaround makes me happy. Maybe it's just the instant gratification, but I want it right away. So that's just, I find that to be one of our kind of most novel use cases. So from that perspective, basically, it was about a 15% increase in ROI for us with better automation from that perspective. And it just kind of has kind of permeated the business too, kind of the mindset there that like, if we can leverage user data for better automation, we're just going to be better off, just on all respects. One interesting thing about Tripping site is we don't require a login. We want to make it easy to use, like no barrier to entry. We want you to be able to come in, find what you want, and go. So we kind of have some email roadblocks, so we ask people to give us their email so we can help you out. But we don't require a login. And so from that perspective, like we have to come up with clever ways to try and do this cross-device attribution and things like that. And so what we do is we try to collect more data from the users and try to use it passively to kind of solve these problems. And that's kind of always been our MO, is like, how do we basically use this data without having to ask more of our users? So I think a classic problem online is that everyone just up front wants you to log in. They want you to give you your data before you do anything, right? And if you don't have to do that, you can make a much more delightful experience for your customer and really drive a lot of value. So I just, my pitch a little bit on more passive kind of stitching of users and things like that.